Over the last 2 months, we've seen an avalanche of sanctions, of economic sanctions, personal sanctions, and the response to Russia's brutal aggression has been overwhelming. It's difficult to say what else can Britain and other Western countries do to stop Putin. There is no silver bullet that would put an end to war or make sure that Russia changes its ways.
In saying that, you have talked about having the airlines that have been leased to Russia are still being used there. I think you talked about Peppa Pig and its trademark being ripped off. These are only small things, aren't they? But in the end, has the West got the ability to try and go a little further?
One aspect that is often outlooked is the area of law. For years, people have been speaking about Russia having no rule of law, and it's very important because English courts are a place where billions of dollars of litigation is taking place related to Russia parties. And Russian state-controlled companies, they use different things to prevail in UK courts. They use coercion to extract testimonies. There are many things that Russia can do. And one of the principles of legal profession is that has to be equality of arms. The example with Peppa Pig, there was a trademark case brought to a Russian court where the Russian court just said, Britain is a hostile country. We will not honor the copyright of the British copyright holder. So I think the legal profession in the UK has to look very closely at cases that are tried in UK courts and take a look at how Russia behaves in these cases.
And Vladimir, in your opinion, has the UK government gone far enough? Is it going far enough in terms of trying to prevent Russian money from flowing through London, and also in taking on some of those law and accounting firms that may be using back channels to still do business with Russia?
Indeed, London has been a haven for dirty money coming out of Russia. And there may be many countries that are sources of corruption, but Russia really uses its influence to undermine the Western system. And British politicians for years have been just paying lip service to this issue. And the enablers of this dirty money, the solicitors, the bankers, the property agents, have all been happy to take dirty Russian money. I hope these things change now. And we've seen quite an overwhelming response in terms of sanctions from UK government. But I think it's too early to say whether this really will have an effect on corrupt money in the UK.
Vladimir, let's talk about NATO if we can, just briefly. Finland today announcing it's going to join. Expectation is that Sweden could follow pretty soon. What's the view inside Russia? How much of a blow would that be to Vladimir Putin, that in many ways this war has actually sparked the expansion of NATO?
Putin's concept that NATO presents a threat to Russia really doesn't stand to any kind of scrutiny. NATO is a defensive alliance. If somebody understands how decision-making process within NATO works, that it's based on consensus, that it has to be a unanimous decision, people would understand that NATO would never be able to adopt a offensive stance against Russia, to attack Russia. So I think Putin just uses the issue of expansion of NATO, and he will use now the issue of Finland and Sweden coming to NATO as a pretext for his aggression abroad.
And just very finally, Vladimir, I know that you know Alexei Navalny well. You're an ally of his. He, of course, remains in prison, but he is able to communicate with the outside world. He's obviously been very critical of this war. Do you know any more about his situation, how he is, and indeed whether he thinks that Russia is now engaged in what will prove to be a very, very long war in Ukraine?
Despite the harsh conditions of Russian prison, Navalny raises his voice against the war and against the totalitarian regime of Putin. We communicate with him through a lawyer that visits him on weekdays for about an hour, during which time he scribbles his handwritten notes to family and to our team and reads whatever materials we send to him. We don't know whether this war will last for long, but one thing is for sure, even if there is a cessation of hostilities, if Putin remains in power, then we will see another bout of aggression in 2 or 3 years. Probably he will be more prepared. So the only way to ensure security of Europe and the world is to get rid of this brutal regime.